Hello, hello. Welcome, Elly, to the Legacy Lounge.
Thanks for having me, Kayla. I'm so excited.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Good, good. We are joined today by you, Elly Hutchings, the amazing Vice President, Regional Director for Cumberland.
Yeah, I should come here more often. I love these accolades.
She didn't pay me to do that, right?
I didn't pay you.
You are not only a leader in your field, but apparently you are, what's it, a sports booth fanatic?
Barstool Sports.
Barstool Sports fanatic?
I might be their only female fan in the country. I hope
I've never heard that term before. And you're also a foodie, which
foodie.
makes sense because, I'm sorry, but Houston trumps.
Oh my gosh, I think
Austin over
Houston's
food.
the best food city. Maybe in the country. Houston has
I would
it all.
arguably say so.
Incredible.
Well, thank you again for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Of course. I'm so pumped.
Tell us about Cumberland. Can you tell us about, the founding story, core values? What inspired this trust company?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I like that you're asking me what inspired it, because it was super inspirational as far as a lot of founding of more financial industry companies. But there are so many trust companies out there. There have been for many years, but we were founded by a group of individuals and families who felt like there was a real lack of service in the trust company industry. And frankly, at the time, 99% of trust companies, they were really massive banks or wealth management firms, right? And the trust department was kind of an added service level for clients. And so as the years had gone by, the banks get bigger, the wealth management becomes global, the trust services department just became 1/100th of what the business did every day.
Yeah.
And so I could kind of go on and on about stories that people have heard, but conflict of interest, really lack of service, 1-800 numbers, scary things you think about. Mm-hmm. So the folks that started Cumberland felt like, man, there is a great concept in the fact of not burdening my family member or friends with different fiduciary aspects in my life or post-death. But I really don't want to have to take the keys to my family and assets and hand them over to this bank. So how do we create the independence but keep the flexibility for families? So very long story short, we were created as a pure estate and trust administration company.
Okay.
So it's all that we do is serve as executor, co-executor, trustee, co-trustee. And the founding families were still privately held. About 65 shareholders are all still very involved.
Okay.
And I think that sort of attention to families and remembering that there are no two families or even individuals that will ever look exactly alike.
No
right?
estates are alike. Yep.
No two estates are alike. You can have the same asset structure, same trust document, same will, whatever it is. The people are so different.
Yeah.
And so having a company that stays flexible for those people and just remembers that in decisions they make is so key, right? And when it's all you do, we're really in the people business.
Okay.
So I would say, that's our core value is that families come first, clients come first.
So important.
It's so important. And so many people have sadly lost track of that, right? It becomes about the bottom line. It becomes about the number. The market's down. We've got to be more profitable this quarter. That is attractive. Yeah.
I love the 1-800, what you just said.
I love perfect.
The what? 1-800, what the comment
it's
you
true.
just said.
It's
when you pick up a phone, you get a real human being.
You get a real human being who knows your name and knows what you care about.
Yeah.
And so, I would say clients are our core value. What do they need? And we try to fit that.
I love that.
Thanks. That's a good deal. It's worked out.
Really, a lot of people don't realize that trust companies really do take over a lot of the work that otherwise family members would take over, right?
They should.
And so let's kind of just jump into the trustee. First, though, let's talk about what is the difference between individual trustee and a directed trustee. I think that'll kind of help set the stage here.
Yeah, totally. People ask me all the time, who's your biggest competitor? And I think they're looking for me to say, whatever bank down the street or whatever corporate entity. And really my biggest competitor is the individual trustee. So I usually sit at tables and families are saying, do I have my oldest child do this? Maybe my brother Joe? Or do I make this leap to a corporate entity, right? And that's scary. You don't know my family. You don't know what they are.
Or they have horror stories, right?
Or they've heard, exactly. The neighbor has worked with so-and-so bank, and they're like, oh my God, it was terrible. They only gave me this amount of money, and I had the 1-800 number.
1-800 number.
And so but I think that people have thought of the role of executor or trustee as this honor, right? You're the oldest child, you're my responsible one, you've done so well in life, you're the one I'm trusting to do this.
Yep.
I think the mentality is really changing around what a burden it is.
Yeah.
People forget that, first of all, on the estate side, there's a timeline. Like the IRS literally says you have to be finished by this time.
You're also the emotional part of it.
I was
right?
just going to say,
like the hardest time, one of the hardest times.
Easily the hardest time in your life. You're grieving, right? Potentially there's been a long illness you've been dealing with your parent or family member, and then you immediately have to jump into this highly skilled job. And you're typically answering to siblings or nieces and nephews or cousins, and that puts people in a really difficult position.
And it's fiduciary too.
You're also liable. People forget that. Like you can get sued, and people do all the time. You can ask any fiduciary litigator. Their top lawsuits, the highest percentage are against individuals because they don't know what they're doing, right? And they're not even trying to mess up.
Yeah.
They're not even trying to do bad by the family. They just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then trust funds, if you say, okay, I'm going to leave this inheritance for my child in a trust fund, you're leaving them with another entity, right? You've got another tax filing. You have to do principal and income accounting. You have to know what the heck your trust document says.
That's like we say here, they come simple and they leave complex.
They come simple and they leave complex, exactly. Right? Like especially now, like complex is great. There's great tax planning. There's great things you can take advantage of, but it's a lot to break down.
Yeah.
And I think people used to also think of it as, oh, you only need those when your children have messed up, right? Or like they're not responsible, or they're going to need this, like, you know, big brother their whole lives.
Yeah.
And I think now it's more like, man, my children have been so productive. They lead full lives. They have full-time jobs. They have children of their own. I want to give them this gift. Doctors and lawyers, they live all over the country.
Yep.
You know, being able to say, I'm giving you this gift of a co-fiduciary or of help while you go along, I think it's a cool thing to do.
I like that idea, the word gift of it.
Yeah.
I really like that idea.
So going back to your question, I think individual versus corporate, I sometimes say I'm trying to be the anti-corporate corporate. I want to fit somewhere in between an individual and a corporate. I want to be the independent party. I want to have some continuity, but I want to feel like I'm part of your family.
Yeah, no, I love that. I really do.
Thanks.
So you did touch upon the executor role. Can you explain kind of how, you know, in real life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because this is all conceptual, but we're alive, parents are alive, people are alive.
Right.
How does that work, like, when this happens?
Yeah.
You know, how does the executor, how do you come in as executor?
Yeah, it's crazy. Taking a step back, what I hope to do, and I usually get this opportunity when I work with good advisors like you all here at Stavis, but I would like to know that we are named in the documents, and I'd like to keep up somewhat often, whether that's annually, biannually, as people age, maybe biannually. Okay. And you don't pay us anything till you die. We can always, everybody's wondering, like, what do I pay for this great service? Don't pay anything till you die.
Then it's the kids' pay.
Then it's the kids' pay, right? It's your estate pays.
Yeah.
But I'd like to know a little bit about you. So when I do get a call that says so-and-so passed away, it's not a complete surprise, right? I have at least have some information. I have some asset information. I know some of where the dead bodies are hidden, kind of thing, if I can. And then it's a real fire drill, frankly, in the beginning, because we hope that we can allow your family members that you've left behind some of that time to grieve, and we can kind of jump in and be like, who has keys to the house? What's happening to the dog? Do we need to get the dog to New York with the son? I mean, there are some immediate...
The dog, too.
Right, the pets. They're like
wow.
number one. I know.
Interesting.
And so many people have them and forget, like, they may outlive you. So we deal with some of those immediate things that are so important. And then we hopefully slowly, you know, meet with the family, let them know, like, here's the assets that we're aware of. Here's exactly what we think it's going to take to kind of settle these, to sell personal property, whatever it is. Okay. Do you guys want the vacation home in Colorado? Do you not? You know, all those. Then we kind of work along step by step. But I think people forget, you know, it's funny. I have a lot of baby boomers that I feel like are doing it for their parents right now. And then they'll call and say, like, man, I don't want my children to have to do this. It's like, until you go through it, you forget that, like, while you're planning a funeral, there are all these, like, real things you've got to take care of.
You have to take care of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's left to one individual, I mean, they're not just sitting there just waiting to take this role on. They have a whole other life, right?
Exactly. Not
so
only that.
It's tough. And
it's really hard.
And especially, like I said, if you come to us, it's, you know, we add the trust, we add the complexity, we add the grats, we add the FLPs. And so it really is, it's critical to have somebody in that fiduciary role.
I think so too.
And the trustee side. And then also the executor, you know, it's more of a finite, right?
Yeah.
Period of time. But it is right after. And it is, you know, could be one of the most important jobs.
Totally.
Retitling.
You're setting the stage for the next generation.
You're setting the stage. Exactly right.
Definitely.
Moving on to kind of just like family dynamics. Can you describe how you work with families
Oh my gosh, Kayla, that's like a really hard question.
I know. Or like, okay,
I probably
one
should have looked
really
at your
good
questions
example.
before this. How I work with families. Family dynamics is somewhat all I talk about.
Yeah.
And I usually joke, like, if I sit at a table and a family says, we're like super normal, we all love each other, I like want to walk out the door. I'm like, you're probably the craziest of all of them. We all have family dynamics. And I personally think, like, when I am looking at, like, is Cumberland the right fit, or what can I do for this family? Family dynamics are, like, the number one thing I think about. Like, is most responsible child, how at risk are they with the rest of the family? Like, have mom and dad been at a place where they have even shared what they have and how they want it to look?
It's probably often, right?
It's often that they feel like, man, I want my children to be productive, so I don't want them to know the wealth that we've acquired, but also like they kind of need to know. It's a hard thing in life. So I'm always kind of looking for like what dynamic aspect, what dynamic shift can the independent party provide is like my thinking. And frankly, as a salesperson, that's what I think, like, where can Cumberland provide value? And it's with those family dynamics. But the hard part about your question, like, how do you work with families? Like, I've never done the same thing. It's crazy. And I'm proud of that. We do not have any formulas. I wish I had some magic answer that fixes all families. I don't. I just think that removing the history that families bring with each other in those relationships and allowing an independent party, you automatically alleviate some of the difficult dynamics. The objectivity, exactly.
And you're the bad guy, really, right?
I can also be the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
you know, like,
it comes down to.
when your sister's husband, like, backs up to try to take the smoker day one, it's like, I can be like, no, that's a big one. Smokers are valuable.
Really?
Especially in Texas. Everyone wants dad's smoker. It's like
gosh,
number one.
So funny.
So it's like, you know, I can be like, no, smoker's not yours. You gotta wait a second. You know,
I just have to wait a second.
Exactly. So, like, trying to learn, like, everybody wants the smoker. That's an important dynamic. But yeah, there's something that's important to every family, and it's always different.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. And, you know, our values are very similar. I mean, like we said, no estates, even if the estate looks exactly the same, the planning is different.
Totally.
Everything's different.
Totally.
I mean, so when you I have one more example, or one more question about an example. Say there's a family with just some tough kid dynamics.
Yeah.
Right?
And maybe they all do.
They all do, really. Yeah. And so, especially, like, if they get remarried, is there any, like specific examples on how you kind of work with hers passing?
Yeah. I'll first tell you, if you are in a second spouse situation, a second marriage, I think you are crazy to not hire an independent fiduciary. I truly think you are, like, asking for trouble.
Yeah.
You know, and people will say, like, my kids love my wife. You know, they've really, like, gotten to know her. You just wait till you're gone. It's just a different dynamic. Speaking to those dynamics, it does change when matriarch and patriarchs fall away and pass away. So I think that it's really key, especially if your children have a good relationship with the second spouse, keep that relationship intact, right? Let someone take away the awkward money part. Like, are you giving everything to the children? Are you giving your second spouse a marital trust where they can spend during their lifetime, but then it goes back to the kids? Are you giving a lot more to your second spouse than you ever thought you would, and it may go to their children and not to yours? There are so many options there. But being able to have some advice as far as, how do I share this with my children? How do I make this happen in real life? How does this continue on generation to generation? I can't stress the importance of it enough.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and blended families are hard.
They really are. And no two families are the same. And it's just different.
It's totally different, exactly. And it's even harder when money comes into play.
It really is.
It's a lot.
What's the Mark Twain quote? You never know a person until you share an inheritance with them.
Oh my gosh, I don't know that quote. That's amazing. I should tattoo that on my arm or something. I'm not into tattoos, so maybe I'll get one.
That's what you need a tattoo.
I think that's great.
You know, there's a lot coming up changing, especially with the sunset coming up in 2026.
Yeah.
How are you guys, navigating and adapting to this?
Yeah. I first want to say that I think people, in 2012 we did it, but people can get really trying to all have their crystal ball or like 8 ball of seeing the future, right?
I would love that.
I would love that too.
Amazing.
We would be like really good at our jobs.
I know, right?
We could tell everyone what's going to happen in the future. No, I just think that people can get a little bit crazy about planning for it. Let's just say that. We don't know what's going to happen. But I do think it's important for fiduciaries to realize that there are potentially going to be because so many more of your clients may be taxable, they're going to start gifting in different ways than they have, right? They're going to start trying to lower their estate value. That means we're going to have more trust where there's not much activity, right? So maybe Elly is daughter, dad says, okay, I do need to get my estate down. I'm going to put $3 million in a gift trust for Elly, but I don't really want Elly to use it till I'm gone, right? But I don't want to deal with this separate entity. So I do think that as a company, Cumberland is trying to navigate, because we are so built on client service, we're trying to navigate being able to service people and knowing exactly what our job is when you don't necessarily have a lot of interaction with a client, right? You're really just there for a tax purpose for a certain amount of years. So that is kind of what we're talking about to people. Okay. And we'll just see what happens.
See what happens. It's not over till it's over, right?
It's not over till it's over. And they'll change it again. We'll be doing this podcast in 5 years talking about like another change they got coming, right?
Yeah. So, good. We'll have you back in 5 years.
Exactly. I'll be back. I'll still be here.
Really? I mean, is there any sort of credential that's needed to be working at Cumberland, or tell me about like the employees that work there, right? Because you guys are trustees, right? You're executors. There's administrative staff. So how much support do you actually have, and is it scalable? Are you growing?
Growing like crazy, I feel like. And it's hard to hire good people. I think most companies would say that right now. It's hard to find good people. Cumberland is definitely a certain culture, and we want that to be a good culture fit. I want to take a step back. One thing, I'm so proud of the people that work at Cumberland. I feel like they are who I sell every day. I'm obsessed with them. I'm really glad I don't do what they do, because I couldn't, frankly.
Obsessed.
I really am obsessed. I think they're great. And so many trust companies or banks have said, like, to be a trust officer, you have to either be an attorney, have an MBA, have some type of financial background. We really haven't. We have plenty of those on staff. But we have felt like, especially when you aren't doing the investment or asset management.
That's what I'd like to get to that. That's the investment part.
Yeah, because, again, we don't do that. We leave that up to sort of like Stavis and investment managers. But you're really in the business of people. And so like some of our best trust officers have been teachers for a long time. I have two, I think are two of our best actually, who were mothers most of their careers. They've come back into the traditional workplace and are really good at it. We have an ex-cop who's very good. I mean, all kinds of backgrounds. Our CEO has said forever.
Recovered CPA.
Yeah, recovered CPA. Love those.
I love that term.
Yeah, seriously. Our CEO has said for a long time, like, I can teach you the trust business, but I can't teach you how to have a heart. And it's so important. Like, if you come to it with that, like, we can teach the rest.
I love it.
And so, we work on a junior partner system. So about equally amount of support staff as we do what we call relationship managers, trust officers. Okay. And that's important to us to make it, like, if somebody's out of town or somebody switches to another department, like, we want to make sure you don't feel any lack of service.
Yeah.
That's a little bit about who we are, literally.
So going back to the investment part, though, and I think this is kind of how you're different. So tell me about how you do differentiate from these other trust companies as far as, keeping assets on, if, some you have to keep assets for executive roles, some you have to do. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'm going to go kind of back to that spectrum I talked about. You've got the individual, and then you have the traditional corporate, sort of that bank wealth management firm model. They are what I call all-in shops. Okay. If they are going to serve as executor or trustee, they want all of your assets to come in, and they're going to manage them while they do those roles. Okay. We do not want to bring assets in and manage them. We feel like that is too much power under one roof, right? There's just not a system of checks and balances there. You're never going to fire yourself as investment manager when you're trustee, and vice versa, right? So we really like that Cumberland says, you know what, we're really good at the estate and trust administration part. We're going to stay in our lane and be good at that. And then you're going to hire the asset managers of your choice. So that's usually an investment person who's really good at the marketable security or alternative piece. Sometimes that's a mineral manager if you have a mineral portfolio. Sometimes it's real estate if we have rental properties. Whatever it is, we want sort of best experts in their field. None of us work for each other. That's key. But we all work for the family. Key. And I think that that's important, that we're all kind of looking out for each other. Okay. And I've talked a lot about client service today, but I think when you take out the asset management piece, you leave that to sort of the best in their world. Yep. It allows you to focus on the client. It gives us time to like build teams around it, and what do clients need, and what is this tax, world we're coming up on, those kinds of things.
And what I really love about Cumberland is that you get in front of clients, right? Yeah. And so, there's a name with the face. Yeah. And really what I'm thinking of is when it comes to next gen. Because really, it's the next gen that's going to have to deal with this. And here at Save Us Wealth, I'm very, very focused on engaging the next gen. But it's also hard because, talking about this stuff, death and taxes.
It's horrible.
It's horrible, and it's an admission of death.
Yeah,
and
it is.
It really is. And so how do you engage the next gen, or do you engage?
It's so hard.
I know.
It's really hard. I will say, and it's different for every family, but when someone passes away, the more that next gen knows and has been made aware of, the better it goes.
That's good to know.
It's like, it is a constant. I can tell you that. I know that there are a lot of reasons why you may not do that, but I'm just here to tell you it typically goes better.
Okay.
And I tell families all the time, like, it doesn't necessarily mean sharing asset information, values,
doesn't have to be the numbers, you're saying.
Does not have to be the numbers. That's like the least important part, right? I think patriarchs and matriarchs focus on that because they're like, man, we've built up this X amount of fortune. Our children need to know that. I really don't think they need to know the numbers. I think trying to communicate value to next generation is important. Like, I tell parents, like, if you're laying there at night and you think, okay, my child's going to inherit X amount. I don't care what the amount is. What's your ideal way they use it? And that answer is different for everyone. Like, some are like education. Some people are like, I want my grandchildren to go to the best high schools in Houston. Or some are like, I want them to travel together.
Yeah.
Like, just think about, like, what is my ideal? And let's talk to your kids about that.
Yeah. Charity too, right?
Charitable intent. Like, parents, most generations, most individuals end up having a charitable event. And often those sort of charitable intent, sometimes those, like, different types of charitable intent don't align. So, like, let's talk about that. Like, what's important to you? Like, what's important to mom and dad? How do we talk about how we can make those sort of meet in the middle?
Yeah.
I think that's almost more important.
Okay, I'm so glad you said that. We have a service here called Family Retreats.
Okay, yeah.
And, we bring in a professional facilitator, and we really, we get the kids and the parents in the same room, and we talk about, not just the numbers, and we just talk, we talk about what's important to them, and we educate. And, we always say, if you're comfortable with the numbers, but it's really good to hear that the numbers are not the number one thing, actually. So that's actually,
I think they're like
really
the least important, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
Let the fiduciaries, let the people you hire worry about the numbers.
Yeah.
I think, like, have you ever asked your daughter at the dinner table, like, if you had $10,000, what charity would you give it to tomorrow? Like, no one's asked
She's 8,
there.
So I'm going to wait a couple years.
She'd probably have a really good answer for us. She's probably like, myself, the charity of me. That's what I would have said at 8. But, like, great, I've learned something there. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's cool as your children age, like, ask them that kind of stuff. So, I think that's genius. You guys are getting people together. And I think it gives children, parents are so worried about, like, children not being productive, right? I talk about it all day long. I think giving your children a sense of responsibility towards the assets is, like, key number one.
Yeah.
Right? Make them feel part of the asset building, part of the asset value, and morals around it, and they'll do better with it. They'll be better stewards.
No, and I love that. And, I think I've seen some psychological groceries or, our clients sleep better at night, knowing that there's somebody there to help them through this process.
Yes.
In the most emotional time of their life. And it's really difficult, especially after they come to somebody like us. We make it really complex. We're transferring a lot of wealth really efficiently, but that really creates a lot of complexity, a lot of entities. And so having somebody, like an objective party to be able to help with that, I think is critical.
Yeah, and know the players, right? Know who you can call if you have questions. Are you worried or whatever it is? I think it's important. Their parents have hired really good people. Let your children know those people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, actually, that gives me to the next question.
Yeah.
We've worked together. Can you explain how, we work together with families best? Like how the advisor comes in, how the wealth advisor comes in, how, the estate planning attorney comes in.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm loving what you guys at Stavis Wealth Transfer are doing. I think it's really smart. So often I sit at a table and, like, everyone is looking at a certain kind of, looking at it through a certain lens.
Yeah.
It's like the investment manager looks at, like, what's in the brokerage account. You've got an estate planning attorney who's obsessed with, like, the legal part and what the language we're going to use. And I really like that Stavis can look at that whole picture, right? But I think typically we come together. Usually people have the investment managers or the Stavises of the world, and they think, like, man, I don't want to lose these trusted people.
Yeah.
And so that's when Cumberland can be really attractive, because it's like, oh, wait, I can get this independent advice. I can get this independent fiduciary and not lose this beautiful team that I've built.
Yeah.
And then we can really all come at it from each of our lens standpoint and really build the best.
And then they have their team, right?
And they have their team.
Just kind of quarterback.
And then hopefully we put it under the mattress and don't think about it for a while.
For like a year until.
For like a year.
When we have to meet with you again.
When I have to call you again and talk about your death. But yeah, hopefully it's plan for the worst, hope for the best, right? Let's get it in place and make sure it's working well.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Is there anything that, I should have asked that I missed? Give me something.
That's such a good one. I don't know if there is. I feel like, I think that if I think about this podcast and working with you guys, I think we've watched this happen to families as you and I talk to them. I watch people that are really so scared or worried about an independent party coming into their families. Yeah. It's bizarre to them. They're like, man, I never thought I'd need this. My child, maybe you do have an issue, right? We're talking about really productive children, but they're not all out there. We have a lot of special needs in this country. Yeah. We have a lot of mental health. And maybe it's just man, I didn't think I'd be here of needing to hire someone. That can be a scary place for families. And so I think remembering that there are folks out there that are not just coming in to find another way at your assets.
Exactly.
Right? Find another way to manage your assets. Yeah. That's what so many of these companies are doing at the end of the day. And people feel that. These wealth creators are smart that we work with. You know what I mean? And so I think if I want people to hear something, it's there is a beautiful way to sort of, like I said in the beginning, gift your children, your families, whatever it is, this advice, this independent fiduciary, shelter the liability, but you don't have to feel like you lose a sense of who you are.
Yes. No, that's really important.
Yeah.
No, I love that.
But we talked about that. You always ask me good questions.
So as in Save Us Wealth tradition at the Legacy Lounge podcast.
Oh, I can't wait.
Who would be an example of a mentor, a leader, somebody just, you've really looked up to in the industry? You're a mom, you're a professional, you've done so well. Is there one person that kind of sticks out to you?
That's so interesting. Should I say Deb Davis?
I've already
Since
said
I'm
Deb
sitting in her kitchen.
She's
fantastic. Yeah, she's a really good one. As a mom, I have a small child right now. It is, those women who feel like they do it all. They're fascinating to me. I what?
I thought you called your child it.
No. She has a name. It's a she. She's lovely.
It's a she.
It is, you're tired, right? And you're like, man, what are they doing? But on a different note, I'm building a team for the first time. I have someone joining me, and that's a scary place when you've been kind of a solo individual at Cumberland down in Texas for a while. And I sat with a guy earlier this week for lunch, and he was talking about how people who are building succession plans, who are building teams, they put so much time into hiring the individual, who are they going to be, training them, so intensely, and then they don't ever let that individual, do anything, be free, be who they are, actually work in the job. And I see that a lot, these leaders who don't let their kind of employees speak in meetings, and they're sort of always back in the back office or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I'm trying really right now to learn from leaders who take a step back and let their people shine. It's a reflection of you at the end of the day. The egotistical part of me likes that. But just remember, I hired really good people. Let them speak for themselves. You know? And then take a nap on Saturday. I'm trying to learn from that. I'm learning whatever leaders are taking naps. I'm into
I don't think they are, to be honest.
Maybe that's a bad answer, but I'm how do you nap more? No, I'm really trying to think about letting your team shine. I think good leaders speak less than people think that they should. So listen more.
I love that.
Yeah.
What is the best or preferably worst advice that you've ever received?
Oh God, I have to think about worst. Hopefully I've forgotten all the worst advice I've ever
blocked it out. I get that.
Just blocked it out. I'll start with best. I think best advice I've ever gotten, our CEO, when I moved to the sales side, I never thought I'd do sales. And I love what Cumberland does. So I was like, okay, I think I can talk about this great company. But I just didn't know how to do the sales part. And he said to me, we were walking into a big family meeting in Houston, actually. And he said to me, the less we talk in this meeting, the better we've done. And I remember that to this day in most family meetings I walk into. They can learn about Cumberland. I can figure out what they need. And maybe I'm not the best fit, frankly. But the more I can hear from them and what they need, the better. Yeah. And worse. I don't know. I'm really out on those. I'm back on TikTok. I'm really out on all of these moms who act like they are CEOs and with their children 24 hours a day, and their children are obsessed with them, and like they have no tantrums. I'm out on those women.
No,
I'm like, this is terrible advice. It's not your life. And
well, we talk about death and taxes all day.
No, truly. Let's talk about death and, my child's crazy.
I was once compared to a root canal in a meeting, so that was cool. That was actually pretty brutal.
That was a good one. They said a root canal might be better than a meeting with me.
Yes.
No, I'm out on that whole shaming. So.
On the whole shaming.
Yeah.
Okay, one last question.
Mm-hmm.
So we're building this Safest Wealth library here. So let me ask, what is your favorite book?
My favorite book? Oh my gosh, that's hard. I'm a reader, but I read all different things. I sometimes joke that I don't want to read anything that makes me smarter. Like when you're reading trust documents and limited partnerships all day, I'm like, I just want something really dumb.
Like mindless.
Exactly, really mindless. I shouldn't even say dumb because I love their books. But I would say my favorite, I'm sort of obsessed with perspective, right? Like I live a very comfortable life. I'm the first to admit it. I think perspective of like, not everyone's lives are comfortable, right? Yeah. And what I have been blessed with is incredible. So there's a book called Same Kind of Different as Me by Ron Hall, and it's just about this. He wrote it. His wife got breast cancer, and he was sort of feeling, just kind of selfish about the whole thing. And he ends up meeting this homeless man, and they create this really beautiful friendship. And it's just about like, you're going to go through difficult things in life, and it's not all about you all the time. And I try to remember.
I love that so much.
Yeah, it's a good story.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having
me.
This is so fun. I want to live in the Legacy Lounge. Right? This is lovely.
I know. And I'm gonna have you back in 5 years.
Please
it's
do.
on camera,
okay, I'll be back.
It's happening.
Yeah, and we'll be like, man, remember that crazy tax change that never happened? That'd be fun. We'll see.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and all the work that you've done for Safest Wealth and our clients. And
thanks for
truly,
including me.
You're incredible.
Thanks. So are you guys.
Incredible.
I'm excited. We're gonna do fun things.
Yeah, me too.